introduction. So Ashni, over to you.
Thank you, Sujat. Good evening, everyone. Without further ado, I would like to invite actually our speaker for today, Nidhi Pandey. She is a seasoned network security professional with over 15 years of experience in the field. She's experienced in various network and security technologies, such as routers, switches, AAA services, software-defined access, and conducts consultation and workshops for clients. She has worked in industry top companies such as Cisco and is currently working at Palo Alto as the Senior Technical Marketing Engineer for Cloud Security. Nidhi, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. And without further delay, over to you.
So Nidhi, before you comment, I just want to say a few words as well. Ashni, thank you so much for that introduction. Nidhi, on behalf of ISC2 Colombo chapter, I warmly welcome you for making time to talk to all of us. So this is a joint initiative. When I say joint initiative, Women in Cybersecurity is a special initiative of the chapter, where we have this group focusing on creating awareness amongst women, also inspire them to pursue a career in cybersecurity. Right, and there's so many opportunities. There are so many ways in which the women can adopt or walk into this space, right? And I'm sure Nidhi, you'll be talking some of that experience in terms of telling people if they have left the workforce, what are the opportunities they have to come back into the workforce, or from a career progression perspective, what is that they can actually look at, right? So that's something which we advocate. And I personally take it as one of the strongest mandates we carry for the chapter, that we ensure inclusion and diversity. Right. And with that note, Nidhi, over to you.
Thanks, Sujat, and thanks, Suhashini. I'm, obliged, and obliged is not the word. I mean, I'm more than happy, to be part or motivate women to come forward and be part of the cybersecurity industry, because I know that in my field as a TME as well, I don't see many TMEs. If today I go and start looking for some resumes for my own team, I don't find many women in this industry. So I hope I can make some difference, and I hope I can advocate being a cybersecurity professional as a woman in this industry. So with that, let me start the share. Oops, give me a moment. All right, so in today's session, I'm going to talk about the zero trust security approach in cloud infrastructure. Now, we all talk about zero trust across, infrastructure, but what exactly is zero trust is still a mystery to a lot of folks in the cybersecurity industry. I'm Nidhi Pandey, and I'm a senior technical marketing engineer with Palo Alto Networks. A senior TME, as a senior TME, my role requires me to talk to customers, conduct workshops, be an SME for my product, for which I'm advocating and enabling the sales, as well as create collaterals, marketing contents, and some amount of inbound activities as well, talking to engineering, taking up feedback from the field, helping the product management team shape the product and what should be part of the next future releases. Now, before we get into the details, a bit about me. As Suhashini mentioned, I have around 15 years of industry experience, most of which has been in the cybersecurity space. I've been in Cisco for quite some time. I was part of Cisco for quite some time before joining Palo Alto Networks. I spent around close to 13 years in Cisco. To start my career, I was a software engineer. I was part of the engineering team, testing the firewalls. Those days we had ASA firewalls, right? So I was, validating the inspection engines, the NAT, the ACLs, testing different traffic scenarios. And then came the FTDs, the Firepower Threat Defense, the next-gen firewall portfolio of Cisco, right? So I did a bit of testing and worked in the engineering team on the Cisco firewall. Now, after spending considerable amount of time on in the engineering team, I really wanted to explore the other functions in an organization, the marketing, the sales, the product management. So I wanted to explore the other aspects of a business. And that's when I started reaching out to people. I reached out to a couple of product managers in my parallel organizations, and then also some product managers in the security team itself, and I asked for guidance on how to build these gaps, if I have any, to get into a role which will give me some visibility into the other functions of an organization. So I started working on building those gaps, and that's when after working on my skills for a few months, this opportunity of being a technical marketing engineer came my way. And I joined as a TME for the JPAC region for the Cisco's NAC solution, which is basically the identity services engine. You might have heard about it. So, so I was basically front-ending a lot of conversations with customers, workshops for the NAC solution. I was a TME for 3 years for NAC, and after that I moved to the software-defined networking team, working on the switching and routing aspect of the solution. Again, a lot of security was included in software-defined networking, and I didn't lose hold of the security even with the switching and routing. But just recently, I mean, in Jan, I started my new year actually with Palo Alto Networks. I joined as a TME here, working on software firewalls. We basically have these software firewall products for the various private and public cloud. Before Cisco, Palo Alto, I was part of a company called Wise, which is also a startup, and it is taken over by Dell now, working on thin clients and a lot of embedded technologies. So that's about my career. Apart from being a TME, I'm also a mother to two wonderful kids, 11-year-old son and 8-year-old daughter. I'm glad I have a very good support system at home, which helps me or enables me to carry on the TME responsibilities. And as a TME, I need to travel around, talk to customers, sometimes take calls during odd hours. So I'm glad I have a very good support system, and I'm able to take up those responsibilities as well. I'm also a very big Schitt's Creek fan. If you have watched this series, you might be aware of what I'm talking about. It's a very light, easy, fun watch in Netflix. So do catch it up, and let me know what do you think about it. I mean, if I have had a very hard day at work, I just need to watch an episode and I feel good. I'm interested in Indian history. I read books, and of course Bollywood. So you can ask me about or talk to me about any of these topics, and we can have some great conversation. All right. With that, we can get started for today's topic. What we are going to talk about is what exactly is meant by zero trust. What are the challenges for the enterprise when the customers are moving towards a cloud architecture? And how do you apply zero trust to your cloud infrastructure across various pillars. And in the end, we'll summarize our learnings. Okay. So what exactly is zero trust? Now, to understand that, let's understand how we used to have cybersecurity in place with traditional approach. Traditionally, the main goal was to reduce the risk, right? We just had two kinds of network: a trusted network, which would usually be inside your network, inside your organization. That would be a trusted network. And then there is another part of the network which is outside, which you would usually call it untrusted network. And you would have different point products at different, different sections to cater to different security aspects. If you do not trust the IP address, then you would place a firewall. You would create your access list and your allow rules for your trust to untrust zones. For identifying the users, you would probably use, RSA identification card. You used to have that, earlier. You would use those cards to identify the users, or probably use a two-factor authentication, right? If you don't trust the files, then you would probably use antivirus products. Now, we would build these products on the idea of what we can trust and what we cannot trust. And the trust itself is different in different circumstances, right? For example, an employee will have to go through a different set of checks than a contractor, or probably an employee logging in from your office location would have a different set of checks than an employee logging in from a coffee shop, right? So same user in the coffee shop might have a different set of checks added, or probably some extra checks for added security. Now, how do you make sure that the employee's laptop is not malicious, whether it has all the patches and the vulnerabilities taken care? How do you make sure that the employee is not accessing any of the sales or HR related data, which he's not supposed to access? Now, zero trust basically eliminates this implicit trust of your traditional approach. And no matter where this user is, whether it's a coffee shop, airport, office, we remove any implied trust. We run all checks all the time, be it a strict environment or not. So this way, it gives you a much simpler architecture, and you don't need different products for different kind of situations for your infrastructure and different solutions, right? So all you need to do is understand what needs to be protected and implement zero trust security approach, which is basically removing any implicit trust. It is not a single product or a solution. It's basically a technology mindset, right? So how do we really make zero trust into different products? Now, to understand that, we need to understand what all we need to protect. In a network, basically there are, these are the major categories of concerns for a cybersecurity admin, like the users, who this user is, whether it's a contractor, employees, even if it's an employee, whether the employee belongs to IT department, HR department, finance, or maybe someone from the leadership, or even the guest users. Now, this employee is using some endpoint. It could be your office resource, or probably your personal iPad or your personal laptop. Now, endpoints are vulnerable as well. Now, whether the employee endpoints have the patches involved, whether it's running the latest AV, if it gets infected, then and it tries to connect to your office infrastructure, then we could be at a risk of lateral malware spread. Then we have these IoT devices. Same with the endpoints, we have these IoT devices sending information. Now, the problem with IoT devices is that it doesn't have a UI. right? I mean, there is no user, and IoT devices are generally in the manufacturing space, your OT space, your oil rigs, and these are continuously sending information, and they use different set of protocols. When it comes to applications, what these applications are, whether it's infected by malware or it's prone to any kind of command injection attack. How are these applications communicating among themselves and among other resources? And then again, lastly, the content. If there is any data which is exposed, whether we are at risk of data leak, data access to unauthorized resources or not. So these are the 4 important categories of security controls in an organization. Now, what we do is eliminate the implicit trust and always verify for all these categories in the infrastructure, be it cloud or on-prem. And this is what is zero trust. Right now, the network parameter is also not the same today. We have, digital transformation wherein, BYOD devices, IoT devices, employees connecting to the infrastructure from any device and accessing your work resources from your home machine, from your phones, and the various devices. Now, we also have seen increase in the hybrid environment, and more so because of the pandemic, there is an increase in the hybrid workforce, and it's here to stay, right? I mean, most companies are not going back to the traditional way of, setting up the data center or calling the employees back. They can see the benefit, and the new normal is going to be hybrid. We all know this. And that has also caused an increase in the movement to cloud. Companies are moving to a cloud delivered security models. Now, because of all these changes, attackers are using it to their benefit, and they have new avenues of attack, and this is increasing. Top of that, with workloads moving to cloud and the hybrid workforces, hackers understand the security gaps with this changing paradigm, and they launch even more sophisticated attack. Right? So the right answer to protect because of these changing paradigms is the zero trust architecture, which spans the core enterprise infrastructure to cloud and to remote workforce. You need to provide end-to-end security approach and provide zero trust security across your on-prem, your private and public cloud infrastructure. And the reason is because there has been an increase in cybersecurity threats. According to one of the surveys, we have observed that there is 100,000 new malware variants every day. And once it infects any one instance or a VM running in your public cloud, it spreads faster to any other workload in the cloud if you do not have a proper security model in place. And a malware can ruin the sense of security for any organization. There has been several data breaches which has affected cybersecurity industry, and the global pandemic and cybersecurity statistics reveal that there has been increase in the hacked and breached data in cloud. And recent survey also suggests that most companies have unprotected data and poor cybersecurity practices, and making them more vulnerable to data loss. Now, there has been a couple of recent attacks, which is very relevant to to public cloud cybersecurity industry. One of them is the Log4j attack. I'm sure you all must have heard about the Log4j attack. It was one of the recent attacks which happened last year. Basically, it's a logging framework in Java, which is being ported to many other programming languages, and it's used in many applications across business and web portals. Now, there was a vulnerability in this module or this library, and this vulnerability can be exploited by attackers to execute remote code execution and the DOS attack. And it lets the attacker launch targeted attacks, and hackers can steal data or take control of the system. There has been increase in the ransomware attacks as well. 10% of the breaches today are ransomware. there is, according to a survey, the ransomware attacks have doubled in frequency in 2021, and approximately 37% of the global organization has been, victim of ransomware attacks. Revil was one of the ransomware, which is basically a file blocking virus, and it encrypts the file after infection, and the data is stolen and made inaccessible. Bashlight is another malware which is infecting the Linux system. And I specifically want to call out this Graboid, which is basically a cryptojacking worm, which spreads to more than 2,000 unsecured Docker hosts. And we are talking about Docker hosts in cloud. Now, there has been incidents of cryptojacking malware, but this is the first time we see a cryptojacking worm spread using containers in the Docker engine. Because most traditional endpoint protection software does not inspect data and activities inside the containers, right? And this type of malicious activity can be difficult to detect. What happens in this is that the malicious actor gains an initial foothold due to some unsecured Docker daemon, and then it just compromises a host, and then a malware gets downloaded from the command and control servers and gets deployed. And then it starts spreading to any other vulnerable hosts within that space. So what I mean to intend is that the network in cloud is also not immune to these kind of attacks. Cloud network also need to be protected from these cybersecurity threats, vulnerabilities, and all these ever-evolving attacks. And that is why we need to have a zero trust kind of an approach in the cloud security space. Now, on an average, a customer deploys around 2 to 4 cloud services. Could be, they could have their SAP services or SAP applications running in AWS and database applications running in Azure. And at the same time, probably they do have some part of their infrastructure still on-prem. Now, all of these infrastructure are closely connected, right? And they are probably not completely migrated, and they still have some pieces of these applications and information running in all these different cloud providers and on-prem network. Now, these infrastructure is tightly coupled, and there could be traffic between the on-prem to the cloud resources. You could have an IPsec tunnel between your on-prem going towards your AWS network or Azure network. You could have users doing a continuous check-ins to their GitHub repository and accessing some applications, or deploying container-based applications in AWS or GCP. So all these are very tightly coupled, and we have traffic flowing across on-prem, cloud, between the cloud, users accessing them from anywhere. So the perimeter is not under one single roof. There is no specific boundary to your infrastructure today. And that brings in a new set of challenges, right? So the breach in cloud is increasing. The network security team lacks the visibility into traffic in the cloud network that they would otherwise have in an on-prem network. Native public cloud security groups are basically access lists. These are ACLs, and they do not really provide the level of visibility or control that the security teams rely on in an on-prem network. The average organization is experimenting with 3 public clouds and 1 or 2 public clouds, and none of which have the same tools or network security policy modules. So this brings in a skill gap issue as well. The network security team have to learn and become proficient in each of these individual cloud security capabilities as well. And when network security team tries to implement any additional security tools in your public cloud environment, they struggle to find tools as well which can operate and scale seamlessly as your public cloud infrastructure grows. And top of that, with 5G, we will have more and more connected devices, which will definitely going to make monitoring and visibility difficult. So what are the new challenges with the cloud network? Visibility of what is connected to your network, monitoring what is being accessed and how the traffic flows. And in case of an event, we need to have detection and in time prevention of lateral movement of any kind of malware or threat in your organization. Now, a typical use case, let's understand how exactly what all different use cases are there in the cloud, right? The use cases can be broadly classified into 3 categories. First is probably machine to machine, wherein 2 instances of machines communicating with each other and exchanging data. They could be applications accessing database server or SAP applications, or trying to download some data or information from your file repository. So it could be a machine to machine communication. The second use case is probably the most popular category, is the user to machine or the human to machine, where a user is trying to access any application which is hosted in cloud from a coffee shop or from their own probably their own perimeter of office location. It could be a SaaS application, it could be servers, repositories, or anything. And with the rise of SaaS applications like G Suite, Box, Office 365, collaboration has also become easier with employees located anywhere. Along with contractors and third-party vendors, everyone tries to access these applications. But this can lead to unauthorized users also having access to data or applications that do not pertain to their job requirement, right? And securing the SaaS applications also becomes an important aspect of providing zero trust security approach. The third is about digital transformation, wherein you have your things or your IoT devices connecting to public cloud and which exist outside the network, like the sensors in your manufacturing plant, sending the information to your cloud repository or sending the logs to the cloud. There could be oil rigs sending the information to the cloud. And all these use cases are using an untrustworthy medium of internet. Now, let us understand zero trust in a end-to-end workflow, how exactly an end-to-end workflow looks like. Consider this example here. We have this user who's using an endpoint. It could be a desktop, laptop, a BYOD device, anything, right? Because it's not limited to one single device today. I mean, I can access my work resources from my phone as well. So it could be any endpoint, and these endpoints have applications running on it, and it's trying to access some resource in the cloud using one of these. Probably they have some applications open and they are trying to access some resources in the cloud. Now the user uses internet as a medium to access the resources. So packet leaves the endpoint via the internet, it goes to the cloud into a web server, which is running in the public cloud. And behind this web server, probably we have many microservices based applications running in Kubernetes environment. It could be serverless functions, which are needed for applications and so on. And eventually, probably the user is trying to access a PaaS service. Now, in order to provide zero trust in cloud, we will look at every step of this workflow and understand how we leave no security gap open at every step and provide a zero trust security approach in your cloud network. To start with, let's consider the user and the endpoint. Now, this is something, the first aspect, the user and the endpoint, is probably one of the most important aspects of zero trust access, zero trust solution in your network, right? It is the zero trust for your access control, for your users and your endpoints. This is called zero trust network access. And often we get confused about zero trust as being a zero trust network access solution, but it's not the same. zero trust is not equal to zero trust network access. It is basically one of the pillars of zero trust architecture. When it comes to zero trust for users, we need to secure the identity and understand who the user is. This has to be done in a secured way. Probably the user needs to use a 802.1x method, MAC authentication method, two-factor authentication certificate, and so on. So there are several ways how you can identify the user. The second is to make sure that we have a secure endpoint where the user is accessing the resources from. It could be laptop, phone, tablet, anything. Now, based on the verdict is when you provide the zero trust access. What it means is you need to provide the right kind of access for that specific user accessing from that specific device. And finally, the transactions, right? Now, usually there is a trust solution in between, which acts as a medium to validate the identity, the context, and also check the posture status of the endpoints. It can authenticate the device from which the user is trying to access the resource. Once the user has authenticated, the user is granted the required permission. Now, this permission varies depending on the context of the user, the employee, the contractor. Like the employee can access file servers, but the HR need not access the file server, right? They don't need to have access to the file server or the dev servers. It follows the least privilege model, wherein allow only what is needed. With respect to posture, which is basically for the device, it validates what the endpoint is, whether it has any vulnerability, whether it passes through all the compliance checks of an organization in terms of a secure device or a secure environment. Any malicious user or account can get restricted or blocked access. The trust solution can be your SASE provider or any identity solution which has been integrated in your cloud services. Once the environment is secure, the user identity is established, a secure communication channel is established between the users and the resources. Now, another aspect of zero trust network access is continuous monitoring, which is revalidation and re-authentication. You do not keep a user in an infinite state of authenticated and access to access the resources. You need to continuously validate the user. So there could be a time period wherein you can force the user to re-authenticate and get the access again. User will have to re-authenticate, and not just the user, you can also have the re-authentication configured for devices also to check for the posture status again. Probably after a while, the user, trying to access some resources from the net and downloaded a malware accidentally. So the posture status need to be revalidated again. So continuous verification and monitoring is also one of the important aspects of zero trust. The next aspect of zero trust is for providing zero trust for applications. Now, what we observe is that there are three main deployments for applications. The first is lift and shift approach. What it means is that the organizations are migrating to clouds, and they slowly start migrating their applications to cloud. And they move the applications and its associated data to cloud platform without redesigning the applications. So this is the lift and shift approach, which basically opens the path towards the cloud migration. And the reason why companies prefer this is because of the business reasons. It's got reduced cost, improved performance, resiliency, auto scale, and a lot of other features of a cloud security, cloud provider, right? And that's when they just migrate their application one by one. The second is cloud native applications, which is basically moving towards the microservices based architecture using DevOps. This is done to use a more sustainable and scalable architecture, right? You could have microservices which could be shared across many different applications and platforms. So it enables the developers to provide faster development, and the open architecture also enables the integration of innovation easier. The third aspect is basically the mixed approach. You lift and shift few applications, and then for some applications you move towards the microservices based architecture. Now, to provide zero trust approach for applications, some organizations believe that the firewall or the VPN will do the trick. Others think that they get all the security they need from the applications they license. And many still believe that the cloud application security is the responsibility of the application vendors itself. To provide zero trust for applications, you need to define policies, processes, controls, and technologies which will actually govern all the information exchange that is happening in the cloud environment, like your Microsoft Office 365, G Suite, Slack, Box, to name a few. Vulnerability checks and threat prevention is of important aspect for applications so that the services are secure, right? It also needs to be continuously monitored for threat and vulnerability. Unauthorized access to a website, basically that can be a cause of concern, because once they are in, there's no telling what the unauthorized user will do to create chaos, right? And then there is insecure APIs and interfaces which present easy opportunities for the attackers to breach the system. The SaaS vendor is responsible for securing the application's infrastructure as well as its API. This means that they are responsible for the security of the servers, networks, and the code that makes the application a product for the customer. Now, there are many products, security solutions available that can be used for the cloud application security, which can monitor the APIs and provide control and secure activity within the application environment. CASB, you might have heard about the CASB solution, which is the Cloud Access Security Broker. This is one such solution, which is basically a proxy-based solution that duplicates the functionality of a firewall and puts it between your users and the applications and provide a secure environment. Now, when it comes to applications, the threat protection and advanced security services also need to be deployed at the trust boundaries of the applications. Now, when the applications are communicating with each other, it is crucial to inspect the traffic at layer 7 to prevent any kind of lateral spread of malware. There are many microsegmentation products which can provide granular protection at L3 to L4 to block the traffic between the workloads. There is also outbound traffic which goes out of these applications, like the user might be accessing GitHub repository and trying to download the content from the GitHub repository. So there is an outbound traffic from these containerized environment. So we need to secure the outbound traffic from the container environment to the internet or to the developer resources hosted in sites like GitHub. URL filtering service or other next-gen firewall service or many other security products can be deployed to provide policies for developers and users to ensure that they aren't connecting to potentially malicious site and they are not infecting the container environment. There could be DNS security which can be in place, which can guard against any kind of data exfiltration to make sure that the customer's information stays within the environment. Now there's inbound threat protection as well, which is also needed, right? So you need to protect your inbound perimeters as well. Now, the security teams can prevent threats from entering your container-based environment by using anti-malware products. And you need to have a comprehensive security solution which can basically cater to these inbound, outbound, and east-west kind of traffic, which is existing in your containerized or application-based network. Now, the other aspect of cloud security is securing your DevOps environment. right? Cloud native, basically we use this term called cloud native many times. It refers to technologies that are basically used to develop the applications built with, services packaged in containers, deployed as microservices, and managed on the cloud infrastructure. DevOps processes and DevOps provides a continuous delivery, continuous integration, and continuous delivery of your cloud native applications. DevOps is evolving rapidly, and it has become one of the most demanding skill set for developers as well. Right? It basically allows the developers to quickly and automatically test the package and deploy their applications. Now, there are 4 major stages of a DevOps process or a CI/CD process, which is code, build, deploy, and run. Right? Now, we also use this term called shift left. Now, this is something which needs to be used and practiced to provide a zero trust security approach in the cloud environment. The term shift left means it is basically an effort of the DevOps team to guarantee the application security at the earliest stages in the development lifecycle. So to shift left means to move a process to the left of the traditional SDLC or the software-defined software development lifecycle. Now, there are 2 major approach to a shift left initiative: security and testing. Until recent years, security testing was implemented at the end of the development cycle. Following the application testing, at this stage, security team would perform various type of analysis, testing, static analysis, dynamic analysis, and so on. And the result of the security testing would either permit the application to proceed for deployment in the production, or reject the application and pass it back to the developers for remediation and to implement those code fixes. Now, this resulted in longer delays in development or increased risk of releasing a software without necessary security models. Right? So with shift left approach, we implement security measures during the entire development life cycle rather than the end of the development process as possible, making it more easier, faster, and affordable to address the security issues. At the code stage, you can run the scanning of the host, scanning of your Java platforms, the Python libraries on your GitHub on commit, or at regular intervals. You can identify the vulnerabilities and risk factors integrated with host, containers, and serverless environment. With respect to infrastructure as code security, you need to figure out any kind of misconfiguration and fix those misconfiguration in your templates. You can implement, policies and create guardrails to guard these policy frameworks or these infrastructure as code templates for a secure coding environment. During the build stage, vulnerability and the compliance takes into factor, and it's an important aspect to be checked across hosts, images, containers, and serverless functions again. Now, you could use products to do an image analysis sandboxing, which is basically to analyze the runtime behavior of the images before you run them in your development and the production environment. You can identify if there is any kind of secrets or any kind of information which has been put in your infrastructure as code template or your container images or your build, right? So you need to prevent any kind of secret exposure and account information if that's getting leaked during your build process. You need to identify issues with configurations as well to prevent any kind of code injection, and also harden the CI/CD pipeline by identifying the configuration which can lead to vulnerabilities. And these vulnerabilities are the same vulnerabilities which also exist in your on-prem network and are exposed for the malwares to, launch an attack. During the deploy phase, you need to have a central monitoring of Docker events and admission control to prevent any kind of Kubernetes misconfiguration and any kind of deployment criticality or eventuality. We need to be prepared for that. So you need to prevent control or provide controls during the deploy phase as well. To provide CD security, you need to continuously monitor the container registries and your repositories, consistently deploy rules to alert or prevent any kind of vulnerability or compliance issues. You need to set the right kind of metric so that the alarms and alerts are generated, and implement any kind of threat protection. Now, we also hear the term called workload protection, which is basically, you need to provide protection for your hosts, containers, serverless functions, vulnerability scanning, risk assessment, and all that. At every point, you probably also need to provide your IAM security rules about the access on and enforce least privilege access for your CI/CD pipeline. Now, the other aspect is data security, wherein you need to have appropriate scanning in place, malware scanning, data loss prevention, micro-segmentation for your cloud workload, which is also needed to prevent any kind of lateral spread of malware. So all these factors come into picture when we talk about providing zero trust in your DevOps environment. Now, there has been new terms or technologies which you might hear often in the industry. CSPM, which is the Cloud Security Posture Management, is one of the terms, which basically provides visibility, compliance, and governance in your DevOps environment, in your cloud environment. You can gain continuous visibility across your deployed assets, build configuration guardrails, policies to check any misconfiguration, and also used in the multi-cloud environment. Now, it also provides you continuous compliance check, monitoring, and remediation capabilities as well. We have few, vendors who are available for providing the CSPM solution. Prisma Cloud from Palo Alto Networks is one of them. We have Microsoft Cloud Defender solution available from Microsoft. Checkpoint has a solution called CloudGuard, and we also have another player called Orca Security, which is also providing a CSPM solution. So for providing security in your container CI/CD framework, you do have CSPM solutions which can be implemented. There's another term which you can often hear is the cloud workload protection. Gartner published some guidelines for cloud workload protection for implementing the solutions which offer the cloud workload protection, regardless of location, size, runtime, or any kind of application architecture. What it actually does is it secures the workloads earlier by extending your workload scanning, compliance efforts into by implementing the DevSecOps behavior, especially for your container-based and serverless functions, right? So organizations might want to, consolidate CWPP and CSPM strategies, the cloud workload protection and the cloud security posture management strategies to reduce the cost and complexity and identify the risks better. These are the guidelines which are provided by Gartner. In 2021, around June, July timeframe is when they released this guidelines, right? Now that we have understood the various aspects in the cloud, let's understand how the traffic flows in a cloud, right? Now, the first one is basically an inbound traffic, which is the traffic coming in from the internet towards the applications or your VMs and containers running in your cloud infrastructure. It could be, access to a repository, it could be GitHub repository, it could be accessing to a link, or probably, any kind, the user might be accessing some URLs. So this is one kind of a traffic which exists in your overall infrastructure in cloud. The second aspect is east-west traffic. When I say east-west, we are talking about the communication between the workloads, between the different VMs within the cloud. Now, to provide security for your east-west traffic, the most recommended way to start with is to provide or to implement the micro-segmentation approach. You don't want all your applications, all your crown jewels running in a single VPC or a single VNet. And if one gets infected, then it's easier to spread across different other resources as well. So you micro-segment your architecture. You could have your database running in a separate segment. You could have your applications running in a separate segment. You could have your security running in a separate segment, or you could have, traffic coming in from your SD-WAN running in a separate segment. So you need to provide micro-segmentation based approach for your east-west traffic. Now, the third aspect is your outbound traffic, wherein your user, the first one was inbound. I apologize for the mix-up. The third one is your outbound traffic, wherein the traffic is going outside your cloud environment. Now, what all different solutions you have today for providing security across these different traffic aspects? You could deploy a web application firewall, which basically provides protection against OWASP top 10 securities breaches. These web application firewalls are also available in native cloud security providers, like AWS has its own WAF running in the load balancer, application load balancer. Your application gateway in Azure has the WAF running. You could also have WAF capabilities enabled in your next-gen firewall, or you could use a third-party load balancer like F5 load balancers that also has WAF capabilities. So WAF is going to protect your cloud workloads against your layer 7 vulnerabilities or HTTP traffic, HTTP-based traffic. Then you could also deploy next-gen firewalls, which is basically going to sit at the perimeter, or probably, for your east-west traffic, it could be deployed in your specific segments alone, so that any traffic which is basically exiting the network hits the firewall, gets inspected, and then reaches the destination. You could use cloud native security services, security groups, cloud native firewalls, and apart from deploying all this, continuous monitoring is always the guidance to implement a better security. So you need to continuously monitor the user behavior, the application behavior, so that you can change your policies accordingly. Now, the last aspect, or probably one of the most important aspect as well in providing zero trust in security, is to provide zero trust for data. Many organizations are moving their applications and data to the cloud rather than going through the cost of purchasing the hardware or running and maintaining an on-prem data center. They would move their data to cloud. Likewise, probably some organizations manage their data in on-prem, but probably they would want to store their backup in cloud. Regardless of which approach the organization chooses, you may still have questions about security for your data. Is the cloud secure enough? Is my data safe? Is my data protected? Do I know where my data lies? Who's accessing my data, right? So data security in cloud is just as important as data security in your on-prem network. Many organizations refrain from moving their applications to cloud because of the fear of data loss and the data leakage, right? Like, for example, the healthcare organizations initially refused to move to the cloud because of the concern over security of medical records, the privacy, because all these are the important aspect when you want to maintain the compliance with HIPAA for healthcare segment. So you need to implement security that minimize the data breach risk by identifying sensitive data consistently throughout the entire enterprise. And you need to monitor, govern, and prevent any kind of unsafe transfer and provide policy controls. And this, we are talking about data at rest and also data in motion. What applications are accessing these data? Where is this data stored? So all that control has to be provided in when you think of providing a zero trust security approach for cloud. Now there are data loss prevention solutions, DLP solution, we call it DLP solutions, which protects any kind of sensitive data in motion across on-prem, hybrid, and multi-cloud environment. This is important because data is not just in your cloud, data is not just at rest. We have data moving from on-prem to your cloud network. You have data moving across the applications when they are talking to each other. We have users or employees putting in the data in S3 repository in AWS, trying to put in their GitHub, cloning their GitHub repository, creating the user data when they are bringing up their instances. So you need to have a DLP solution, which can also prevent your sensitive data in motion. File encryption is one of the ways. You should encrypt your data even before you send it to the cloud with a strong encryption. Even when you have data at rest, when you're storing the data in your repositories in cloud, you need to make sure that the proper encryption is in place, and you need to make sure that appropriate authorization or access is provided for the data at rest in your cloud provider. The metadata should be encrypted as well between all the management communication between the systems and the cloud providers. It should run through secure channel with SSL encryption. If we have data coming into your cloud provider, you need to make sure that the channel is encrypted. You can end that SSL communication at your firewall, or probably at your WAF firewall or your next-gen firewall. You could enable your decryption policies to inspect what's the content inside that encrypted data. But the channel, the medium should be encrypted, and make sure that the metadata is encrypted. So what it means is that at any moment of time, all aspects of your data is secure. So as I said, web application firewall, which provides instant protection against any kind of SQL injection, cross-site scripting, unauthorized resource access, remote file execution, and other OWASP threats can be prevented with application firewall. And then, of course, we have cloud providers infrastructure, which could be used. And we should make sure that the high availability SLAs are also maintained by providing a redundant infrastructure to minimize any kind of downtime and eliminate any kind of failure for your data in cloud. Lastly, monitoring. Now we looked at the different aspects of providing zero trust in cloud. It's for the users, applications, containers, data, traffic. All these aspects need to be protected, and you have deployed your zero trust security approach. You have defined your zero trust security approach in your cloud. But oftentimes we have made these decisions and configured policies and controls based on what we know, like current information, what we have. But we also need to have system to revalidate this zero trust policy or the decisions, depending on the user behavior. Let's say the user's endpoint is infected, or probably the user is trying to show some kind of malicious activity. So you need to continuously monitor the user's need and behavior. We might need to modify the existing rules and apply dynamic policies to this changing behavior. A contractor might have requirement of accessing a file server today, and probably based on the change in the product roadmap or some strategy, the contractor also need to access certain other information. So you need to make sure that you have a system in place to continuously make these dynamic changes to your zero trust environment. Also, sometimes the environment or the laptop which was not vulnerable is vulnerable now. So how do you implement or monitor this activity? Monitoring the network becomes very important, and once the endpoint, the infected endpoint is known and monitored, you can immediately quarantine that endpoint and change the access privileges as well. So continuously inspecting and logging all traffic to identify any kind of unusual activity and decide on how to make more policy changes will make your environment more secure. Your protect surface will grow with continuous monitoring, and you can make changes to your architecture and enhance security if you have a model wherein you can continuously monitor this zero trust decision or the policies which you have made. With that, let me summarize what we just spoke about, right? So when we talk of zero trust, we talk about removing any kind of implicit trust from your network. You need to make sure that only legitimate application communication is allowed, any legitimate traffic is allowed, and you need to make sure that you are segmenting the network and enabling layer 7 policies. You need to understand or know your crown jewels. That means understand what you want to protect, understand what all resources are there in your network, in your cloud network. What is it that you need to protect and you need to have the visibility for? Leverage a least privilege access strategy, and you enforce a strict access control. Provide access to only what is needed for a user or for the endpoint. You need to make sure that you inspect and log all the traffic, or if you don't do that, then it will be difficult for an admin to even troubleshoot or understand how the attack really happened, and you cannot really mitigate any kind of risks. So identify what type of applications are public, private, SaaS applications. Identify what data you are putting in cloud, whether it's confidential data, sensitive, unimportant data, where the data is, whether it's on-prem, on cloud. Make sure you're not exposing any kind of important information like security, social security number, your credit card information. You need to make sure the appropriate checks are there. You define your security surface for your data, application, assets, which are critical to your business. You need to understand how the transactions happen in the cloud, how the applications are talking to each other, how the users are talking to the application. So understand the transactions existing in your network, and then start with architecting your cloud infrastructure and create the boundaries between your users and applications, and provide a micro segmentation based approach to provide to segment these various different applications, right? So you can develop your company's zero trust policy based on all these different aspects, different context information which the system will collect, and provide a least privilege model. And in the end, monitor the activity and continuously provide a mechanism to make dynamic changes to your network. So with that, I would like to end this and open up for any question and answers if we have.
Nidhi, thank you so much for setting the stage, and I'm sure we will have a very interesting discussion. And I'll start off with one key point which you mentioned. You said zero trust is not equal to zero trust network access.
Exactly.
Right. So I guess a lot of people pick zero trust network access, and they think that's the whole world around zero trust. But
Right.
there are several other pillars which we need to take into consideration. So in the audience we have, I would like to welcome Amila, Country Manager, Palo Alto, Chintaka, Systems Engineer, Palo Alto. So we have a great team out here to support Nidhi. So I welcome the participants to ask any questions you may have. There are 2 questions which have been already posted. So I will set the stage with those questions to start with, and the others can actually join in and ask other questions. So let's start with the first one. There was a question which was asked from Raj. Let me just pick the question up. Just give me a minute.
Sure.
So he's asking, he's talking about the posture check.
Yeah.
How are posture checks done?
Yeah.
And how do you manage or look at the posture checks at your branch locations?
Yeah. At the branch locations, okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's a question, right? It's all about posture checks. So what is the importance of posture checks and how do you do it?
Okay. All right. So 2 aspects to posture check. First one is the posture of the endpoints, right? So when we say posture check, we are checking against some compliance aspects, whether the right version of anti-malware or antivirus product is installed on the endpoint from which the user is accessing the resources or not. These could be your also could be your hot patches, or Microsoft releases patches every I think every 14 days or something, and out of which there could be critical updates, and your organization mandates everyone to have these patches installed. Now, there are several ways which the industry follows. There are vendors in providing the posture management, wherein you could go ahead with an agent-based or a non-agent-based solution, wherein there is information being sent from the endpoint against the policy configuration which you have. The policy could be for your file check, antivirus check, your compliance check, and many other checks which you want to do for your endpoint. And against those policies, you are trying to fetch the information from the endpoint, and the endpoint will be sending that information. The mechanism could be different. You could use your WMI service, you could use an agent-based solution to get this information and continuously send the posture check to your solution. The second aspect of posture check is for your cloud applications, wherein again, you can either go ahead with an agent-based solution and policies. Basically, it works against certain set of policies for your configurations, rules, which checks whether the right kind of practices has been followed, the configuration is right, and it checks against those and sends the information back to report the status information.
Right.
I hope that answered.
Yeah, definitely it did, Nidhi. I'm just going to expand that question to a different context. Now, today we see a compelling reason for organizations to allow the users to use their own personal device. BYOD concept has always been there.
Right.
Some organizations have consciously said no to it. Some have decided to play along. Some had no choice, they had to do it. So now when it comes to posture check, right, you have your own organization device, you have full administrative control where you decide what to check. And when it comes to a BYOD device, what is the bare minimum you should do for a posture check? Right. So Nidhi, you can answer this question, and you can also get your team to chip in and give a different perspective if they have it. So Chintaka, Amila, you're free to join in as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
So,
Nidhi.
Yeah, so for BYOD device, I mean, when you look at how we really secure, I mean, what we need to understand is whether that environment is secure enough for me to provide access to this user from their personal device. So it could be a certificate-based approach. It could be an identification-based, I mean, wherein we would prompt the user to properly enter their credentials, validate using certificates, or probably, download some applications or certain parameters to make a secure environment in your BYOD environment, right? So, and not just that, there are many MDM vendors as well. You could have integration in place with MDM vendors, which could probably do the posture check for jailbroken, pin lock, and right kind of applications installed or not. So with the right kind of integration with these other vendors as well, you could run the checks in your BYOD environment to make sure you are providing a secure environment. So to summarize, it could be your posture coming in from your MDM environment, identifying the user, downloading certificates and validating the identity, and so on. Yeah.
Right. Awesome. Chintakna, do you have any comments?
Sujit,
go ahead.
one small feedback.
Yeah.
Actually, what I believe is the considering the BYOD is depending on the maturity level of our zero trust journey.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think, right?
That's
Am
actually,
I
yeah,
correct?
that's actually a good point, Nishant. So when we talked about zero trust, we talked about zero trust for the applications. We talk about zero trust for the users, and then we talk about zero trust for the devices. So where we apply the zero trust matters. So when you consider applications, we are not trusting whether you come from a BYOD device or whether you come from your Office generated level. It doesn't matter. So the zero trust is all about that. We are not trusting anything. You come from BYOD device, you come from your Office laptop, doesn't matter. So when we apply zero trust for the applications, we apply zero trust for the application. So it's all about the transaction to that application. That's where we apply the zero trust.
Right.
So what Nishant told, that point is absolutely very valid. So where you are at the maturity level, so if you have zero trust for the applications, then you will not consider, okay, you are from a BYOD device or this from Office.
Right.
Shanta, I'd just like to add something to your point, right? And I would like to go back to Nidhi's last slide, where she's talking about remove implicit access, right? Continuous validation, right? So while we may allow applications or device to access, it is for us to know what the gaps are. Nidhi also mentioned about making use of third-party vendors or multiple other vendors to complete the puzzle. Like she spoke about, specifically she spoke about the MDM, right? So it is for us to understand, in order for us to secure our crown jewels, again, going back to Nidhi's last slide, that's what we are trying to protect. Everything else is external to us. The user is external, the device is external, our workload is internal, the data is internal, right? What is going to bind this is your network communication. So we need to identify what the vulnerabilities that exist or could arise while you use, and how do you ensure that you continuously minimize your exposure? Because we will never achieve a zero risk. While we talk about a zero trust, we will never achieve zero risk. How do we lower it? How do we have contingency plans? How do you build resilience? But the important thing, right, the point which you raised, Nishan, is very good in the sense, like you're saying, it is a journey. If you look back in the past, we looked at solutions where we said, okay, a start to end a project, then you have an end. You implement a firewall, the project is done. But when you talk about zero trust, it's an evolution. You continue to evolve and you achieve different levels of maturity. Now, we also have two questions which are related to this discussion, right? One where I see Rusiru asking about how do we implement zero trust in a completely disorganized environment? I use the word disorganized, that's my own interpretation, where you do not follow structured development methodologies. Right, we talk about development methodologies, we talk about waterfall methods, we talk about RAD, and today we talk about DevOps and various things. But do we really look at CI/CD? And Nidhi, especially you spoke about shift left. Now, how can an organization overnight turn left or shift left? Any thoughts, guys? I mean, we have Latsara here, we have a full lot of people here, so you all can also share your views, right? It's not necessarily only we talk, right?
So let me start with, the question itself, wherein you have the question. Let me read. Yeah. So legacy or immature software that don't play well with zero trust principles, right? Now, first we need to identify what applications we are talking about when you are moving, whether you are doing the, migrating these applications as is to the cloud environment. Do you, identify these applications? Micro-segmentation is my recommendation to start with for any kind of such unknown or, immature applications. So you need to have a micro-segmentation based approach, because when you say immature, then probably you're talking about you don't know how this application will behave, or you don't know what kind of communication is going out of this application, or so on. So you need to make sure that you segregate it out, you segment your cloud infrastructure such that you separate it out, and you need to monitor the communication between these applications, whether it's an inbound communication or communication between two different segments. So you need to monitor this and inspect, provide proper security controls to get visibility into what is getting in and getting out of this segment. So yeah, that's my perspective. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, it's Mille here. And the thing is, other than what Nidhi was saying, so we'll say you have a legacy application, right? So which doesn't have any intelligence of the SSO or a multi-factor authentication by application itself. So maybe you can put a front layer of additional security which can do the MFA or authentication on behalf of that legacy application, right? Before you give that access to that particular session to that application.
Sure.
Something like that, right? So you make that legacy application kind of a trustworthy kind of access by putting a different layer in front of that legacy application, like MFA.
Amila, something else which goes through my mind, and this is something which one of my friends who is also on this session who asked me, how does single sign-on gel with zero trust? We say continuous authentication, but whereas for convenience sake, we have single sign-on. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so that's again that depends on the environment, right? So how good is that? How secure is the environment? You can ease out the SSO, single sign-on up to certain level. But if you see like if anything goes wrong or anything kind of you suspect kind of a misbehaving activity in your environment, then you can have a very aggressive kind of a SSO kind of a environment, which you don't allow just SSO to work on a BYOD device, as you allow that to work on a corporate owned device, right? Yeah. So you can aggressively push on for a third factor always, maybe after 1 hour, or you are changing the application from one application to another, even you are using the same browser, maybe you can aggressively force for a multiple time of authentication. Yeah, it depends on the environment.
Exactly. While it might be an inconvenience, but in order to secure the crown jewels, it is prerogative to continuously validate. Amila, thank you for your answers. And Udit, I mean, I think your questions also got answered by Nidhi. We are talking about cross domains, multiple domain services monitoring. So I'm not going to go into that question again. Laksara, are you there? Do you want to comment? Or did we lose? You had to unmute, Laksara.
Sorry, I have. I have.
You can also switch on the camera. It will be lovely to see you as well.
Okay.
Great, awesome.
Sure. The issue that we have like seen in some of the organization is the zero trust concept should be implemented by people, and we have to tell them that we don't trust you, and do the implementation. So we have seen in some organization like earlier days, what we have been doing is like we have a set of trusted people like administrators, security engineers, or kind of people who are implementing that, and they are implementing for separate set of people. Now we have to go and tell them, so we don't trust anyone, including you. So you have to implement this and then make sure no one is trusted. And then even you have to go through everything. So in some instances, we have seen that people are like kind of reluctant and also get upset when we tell those things to them. So how we should manage those things, and because in a normal days we have seen even when we ask them to implement something, so they are taking a lot of time, and sometimes they don't implement it correctly, like PAM solutions and all these things. Also, we have seen they have some ways to bypass PAM. So we have seen in the assessment, so they have PAM. So but in the administrators, they have some sort of ways to bypass and get access, because they have seen it as a hassle for them. So not because they want to do something bad, but they have seen it as a hassle for them to do their job. So what sort of mechanisms that we can do to implement this zero trust in organizations, and convince the users to do that?
That's a very important point, right? It is basically trying to get the work. I mean, we talk about cohesive work environment, but here we are getting people to emotionally disconnect, right? And say, hey, we don't trust you.
Yeah.
But still try and get people to, adhere to best practices. Good thoughts, Laksara. Thank you for those thoughts. What about others? Any thoughts? Namal, any thoughts?
But Sujit, one thing
Go ahead.
I believe with the zero trust approach, right? We are most of the organization, as Laksara explained, we are trying to align our security framework with zero trust, right? At the same time, I think we are facing a cultural impact as well. Absolutely. Right? Yeah, then I believe we also have the same challenging points that Laksara explained. Then it might take some time, then it will be normalized. No? Then people, especially privilege access management, right? We will adapt to this culture.
Absolutely. It's a journey. It's a journey, isn't it?
It's
not something you can do overnight, but it is visualizing what your journey is going to be, taking those steps and the efforts to get there.
Then
before the risk catches up with you.
Business users as well as the administrators, the privilege access users, also both will get adjusted to this culture.
Absolutely. Imran, thank you for joining all the way from Pakistan.
Yes, thank you. Sanju, my last question is, what should be the alternate name instead of zero trust? When we are having a session with the user, Nishanta is with us now. So user asking, you are not trusting us. Though we are thinking we should explain them some alternative version instead of zero trust. What do you say?
What do we say? Continuously authenticate yourself.
Yeah, sometimes, what I have seen is sometimes it's also the mandate, coming in from higher ups, which forces the organizations to go with zero trust. Like, taking the example of this access or identity, right? I mean, what Imran brought up. I mean, I remember a couple of years back, there was a mandate coming in from the government of India itself to implement a strict access control mechanism to prevent any kind of theft, loss of data, or unauthorized access. In fact, the US government has uh, you know sent out a mandate to implement a zero trust architecture across all the organization because of increasing ransomware attacks which are happening. So I know it's a journey. I know it's sometimes difficult to convince the customers, but based on these recent attacks and what you achieve out of it, if we start explaining them, I guess to some extent we would be successful in starting this journey towards zero trust, at least.
I think it is a chicken and egg situation.
Chicken
right?
and egg, yes.
Right. How
Thank you very
urgent-
much.
Sujit, I have a question.
Go ahead, Namad.
Could be answered by anyone, Nidhi or Amilo, or even the panel members, even the participants. Now, this is a very diversified topic. So you have a lot of pillars, you have a lot of technologies, you have a lot of processes. But when it comes to the ground level, it's all about investment. So today, as a security professionals, you go and justify your management and do the investment, but down the line for 1 year's time, the entire landscape has changed. And you have to again revisit them and say, hey, now this has changed, we need more. So my question is now, as a security professionals, we understand the diversity of this topic. But my question is now, when it comes to investment, the ground level layout of these technologies, so where to pitch and when to pitch, because this is a continuously evolving concept.
Nidhi, do you want to take it?
Sure. I mean, when I start talking to the customers, first thing I try and understand is what exactly is their security approach? What is it that they are trying to protect? Oftentimes, the customers are also not aware of what kind of endpoints are connected to their network, what all different users are trying to access in their network, right? So the visibility aspect is missing. And when we start talking about the visibility aspect, when we start talking about monitoring the visibility, that's when they understand what kind of traffic is flowing in their network and now what they want to protect, right? Oftentimes it's also the education which is needed for the customer to understand where they need to provide the security control, and we would need to help them identify those gaps. It's not just about selling a solution or talking about a solution. It's also for them to be aware, or for the customers to be aware of where exactly their security gaps exist and whether it's of importance to them. Again, the crown jewel aspect of it. It's important to them, then you need to protect it. How are you doing it today? You're not doing enough. Then probably you need to have proper security controls in place. So generally, it's more of like a discovery phase when we start educating the customers about taking a zero trust security approach.
Yeah, and also if I want to add to that, same thing, like how you going to align your kind of a security outcomes with business outcomes, right? So without just kind of having a different discussion, like, because sometimes if you look at the global Fortune 500 companies, they have hundreds of security products or vendors in their enterprise. So now we see a trend, like a lot of customers trying to narrow it down for set of players, and trying to discuss the roadmaps of the solutions and everything, because they can understand what is going to happen from 3 years, then they can align their security outcomes and get their existing investments. So some customers do that, but still some customers look at in a very siloed approach, project, and this is a SIM project, and this is a network security project, right? So end of the day, they end up of spending multiple times of multiple budgets on unnecessarily. So it's always better to discuss the roadmap for next 1 to 3 years, and decide where you are going to host your workloads. What is your crown jewels? Is going to be on-prem or is going to be cloud? And if you're going to cloud, so what kind of a investment we have to do it for security? Or is it worth it to stay on-prem based on their business nature? And a lot of things are into play. So if you have kind of a conscious approach for security before, not like afterthought, I think you can save some investment. We are going to do it in the future. I don't know, Amal, to answer your question. So it's a thought actually. It's not.
Yeah. So
answer,
Namal, I would also like to add, before I add, Laksana, do you have any thoughts you want to share on this? Laksana, are you there?
So, sorry, Sujit. So I was in another call. So,
Okay. No. I mean, Namal's question was, this zero trust journey can be heavy on the investments, or it could be a burden for the management to invest a lot of money to be compliant. What do you see as what the market sees in Sri Lanka? What is your view on this?
I think if you pitch it correctly, because I have done I have mentioned this requirement in some of the senior management and some of the board level also. Because, what I have told them is, now our perimeter is dead, so we don't have any perimeter. Like if you look at before COVID, around 95% of the people are coming to the office and do their work. Now it is totally changed, and also organizations have moved, as I think Nidhi also mentioned, moved most of their services to the cloud. And the main concern, even the board level and the senior management have, is how to protect those data which is scattered all around the places. So users are connecting from anywhere, from their home or hotel, and their data is sometimes in the data center or sometimes in the cloud. Therefore, they see a huge value on protecting their data by using this kind of concepts like zero trust. Because the main concern they also have is, now users, we don't know whether the users who are accessing from their home, whether their environment is protected, whether their wife is using this laptop, whether their children are using those laptops. So all the concerns now the boards are actually raising from the security teams. So like how to protect from these people where there's no perimeter, no longer inside the organization. Therefore, I think if you pitch it correctly, board will accept the fact that even there's a investment. I think you can start from this kind of as a journey. You can start from some different user levels and move it to the entire organization. I think what Namal mentioned is correct. It's a huge cost if you try to do it in a single go. But if you can do it in a phases, I think you can manage, and I think they will support you also.
Sujit, you are muted.
Yeah, Sujit speaking on mute.
Yeah. So one thought I would like to share with this forum.
Sujit, I also,
yeah. Go ahead, Nishan.
Sujit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, my understanding is actually in a zero trust environment, right? We have to protect identities, network, devices, data, and workloads, everything, right? Then in that case, actually, if we start our journey, we have to forget about the technologies, right? If we look at our processes, and then we with the aligning with the zero trust principles, then we can build up our blueprint for that in our journey.
Absolutely.
Right? Then we can think of, secondly, we can think of technologies. With this approach, we have an answer for the question raised by Naman up to a certain level. But anyway, we have to accept. We have to do this investment. It's an inevitable, right? Then we have to do, but there we can minimize. We will decide what investment we have to do, whether it is a must or not.
Absolutely.
And Sujit, while listening to Nishant also, I found that like sometimes you don't even need to invest a big amount because those technologies are always there. Like for example, if you look at for the customers, we have given separate set of security implementation or security controls. And then we have they have to go through those security protocols before accessing the network. But what we have done is actually we have given different privileges for our internal users, or sometimes different privileges to the administrators. What we have to now do is implement the same control for those people and the monitoring for those people by using the same technologies we already have. Sometimes we have to maybe we have to increase the user or performance or the other aspect of these solutions. But at the same time, I think we can start with whatever the solutions we have and start to build upon those things and later do more investment on these technologies.
Absolutely, Laksara. Very good point. Nishant, a very good point. What I actually wanted to, and I think we are also 15 minutes over time, so I think we need to wrap up. So I just want to share a closing thought, right? So it is important for us to take a risk-based approach. So when we do a risk-based approach, we are trying to identify what is our core services which we are trying to offer. What's the core? And in order to offer that service, what are the devices, what are the technologies which you're going to use, or who are the users who are going to have access to these services, or what is the microsegmentation requirement, and so on and so forth. But we need to start looking at a policy which is going to be very, very generic. So I'm talking about a zero trust policy. It should be a framework. It should be technology neutral. So we can say, for example, all identities should be authenticated. Right? So if the identity has to be authenticated, what is the mechanism we would use, which technology we would use to authenticate the user comes in as the next step. So we can go to the market, or before we go to the market, we can look around internally to see what is the investments we have made. If that can be enhanced, let's say, for example, we may have just enabled it. We may not have enforced a particular control. That's what Laksara is talking about, right? So we may have certain technologies where we are already invested in. Are we optimizing it? Or sometimes it can be a process enhancement. Are we refining the process? So I guess if we take a risk-based approach, look at the controls which are required to be implemented as part of the zero trust journey, and I think we can manage the investments. And we can also go back to the management and say, guys, we need this, but this is the approach. This is the timeline we are looking at. And this is how we would end up in year 1, year 2, year 3, because by the time we finish year 1, what we are anticipating to be in year 2 probably has changed, because a lot of things around us also could have changed. There could be new technologies which are around. So this gives us, especially when it comes to technology, an option for us to choose, not in a hurry, but with a lot of focus, with a lot of analysis going into it. We can choose the right technology to come in. Right? And today we don't need to invest. We can always look at an OpEx model, right? And there are services available in the cloud, right? So which means it also gives the organizations the ability to onboard and deboard when required. So the burden is much less. So guys, I mean, I just want to take this moment to thank all of you for sharing your views, right? Taking time from your busy schedule, sharing your views, and making this a successful event. And I also want to tell you, Nidhi has actually told me that she is going to come back and talk about those specific pillars at a later point in time. So this is like a precursor for the Zero Trust journey, right? So she's going to be at the RSA event next week, and thereafter she would come back and give us the dates. And then we would look at doing a series of events with respect to each of those pillars or each of those areas which actually add into the Zero Trust. So I just want to thank all of you for being here. And before that, I just want to hand over the session to Samani to do the closing remark. Samani, over to you.
Thank you, Sujit. So that was an informative speech turned into an interesting discussion, actually. So yeah, so without taking much time, on behalf of the ISC2 Colombo Chapter Women in Cybersecurity Committee, we would like to offer our heartfelt thanks to our marvelous speaker, Nidhi Pandey, for enlightening us on Zero Trust Security. Big thank is going out to the President of ISC2 Colombo Chapter, Sujit Christie, for his immense support and guidance, and the other board members of ISC2 Colombo Chapter for their assistance, and the ISC2 Colombo Chapter Women in Cybersecurity Committee members for their efforts to make this event a success. Last but not the least, to all the participants for joining and sharing your valuable thoughts. Thank you very much for spending your event with us today. You all are welcome to become members of the ISC2 Colombo Chapter, and please look forward to our upcoming discussion on safe internet usage and cyberbullying, which is going to happen in June. And please watch out for upcoming events on the ISC2 social media platforms. Thank you very much again. Have a good day, good evening.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for your valuable time.
Thanks.
Nidhi, once again, on behalf of the chapter board, thank you so much. And I have my board members here. I can see Namal. I'm not sure whether he has dropped out. Inesh was here as well. And I do have my former board members, Latsara, Upul, and a few others who probably hopped in and hopped out. We thank you again for being with us, sharing your knowledge. And we would definitely engage more going forward.
Sure.
And by the way, guys, we have a big event which we are planning with Palo Alto. Amila and Chintaka are working with me in the background. So we will be coming back to you with more details on this very soon. So with that note, thank you so much. Have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Sujit. Thank you, Nidhi.
Thanks
Thank you,
all.
everyone.
Have a great evening.
Thanks, Sujit. Thanks.
Maybe stay on.